Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 309th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger, and increasingly, you can find me kind of here all the time. I'm here every morning now, at least through the draft. I've committed to doing a daily show. So for some folks, you're getting me for the second time today. So that's either most likely not the best thing, but who knows? For some people, it's a good thing. I certainly have enjoyed adding some more conversation to my days about the Seahawks, and it's been a fun show. We've had a lot of folks show up, and by the way, I mean, we've had unreal numbers of people join, subscribe to the channel, join over at patreon.com. I think we had a few dozen new Patreon members in the last couple of days. We've got the new YouTube membership and people joining up there. In fact, Dayna and Jeff, we have a famous YouTube member, and it feels a little bit, I don't know, nepotistic. I don't know I don't know the right word for it, but Josh Cashman has become a YouTube member. It is the thing to do. If Josh Cashman's doing it, that either means no one else will ever want to do it, or everybody's going to want to do it. We're going to find out. If Josh figured out how to do it, you certainly can. I will let folks know that don't know about YouTube membership. And by the way, sincere thank you and to Josh for that. Is that if you're on an iOS device, you will not see the option to join the YouTube membership from that device. You have to go to a desktop browser. YouTube's done this thing where they don't want Apple getting any cut of the proceeds. So you have to go to a desktop browser. Once you join on your desktop browser, then it'll work on your iOS device and everywhere else. So it's a one-time thing. And once you join, you get like all these special privileges on YouTube. You get a little emblem next to your name that lets us know that you're a member. And so when you're in chat, we see it. When you leave comments on any video, we see it. And you'll get answers. You get prioritized for answers to questions throughout the week. And then there's other things that you can do on higher levels, like getting access to private Q&As, ask me anything, whatever we choose to do with that time. And that's all stuff that's just starting to get going. And yes, Sam Brown, who is a patron and a supporter, he is right. One of the things some of this additional money will go to is improving your experience by getting Jeff a new mic. In fact, as of an hour ago, it is purchased and on the way to Canada. So Jeff will have a new mic soon. We will judge together whether or not we've upgraded him sufficiently. But thank you. Thanks for all the support. Really, really appreciate it. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. And last thing I should say there, because there's been a little bit of confusion. I get it. If we just have one membership, it would be the simplest. But there are some YouTube features that we can't give Patreon members without them being YouTube members. And there are some Patreon memberships that we are giving them special things. In fact, all of the audio versions of our podcast that are not the Wednesday night show, everything else is only for Patreon members. So all those audios for that podcast go up there. So bonus points there. You also get access to the Slack channel, and wherever possible, we're going to give patrons access to the live private Ask Me Anything sessions as well. So lots of new information, but just wanted to get that out of the way and let folks know. A lot of stuff going on, and keep an eye on the channel. If you haven't already subscribed, the last thing is you'll notice that chat is only open to subscribers. So going forward, the live show, if you want to participate in chat, it's free to subscribe. All you got to do is subscribe on YouTube and you can get access to the chat. So lots of fun stuff, lots of improvements, lots of extra attention going to the show and to the channel. So appreciate your support. Tonight, we have two of the best on Seahawks Twitter, on YouTube, everywhere around. Dayna O'Gorman at Dayna OG on Twitter, and Jeff Simmons with his current audio. So you'll get a perfect comparison for the next time what he's going to sound like at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. And Dayna's going to host tonight. It is always better when Dayna hosts. And so excited to have Dayna. offered to do that. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Dayna. What do you got on tap for tonight?
Well, thank you. I don't know that it's always better. It's a little different, that's for sure. First and foremost, I think that we need to acknowledge Sam Brown's comment that we need to get Evan a pet spider, because that made me laugh out loud. So thank you so much, Sam. That was funny. It was an interesting week because it was kind of dead player-wise. There were a few signings here and there, but then because of the league meetings, there was a lot that actually happened. So it was kind of weird. It's one of those kind of classic off-season weeks, right? Like, it's just a little strange. Lots of pro days that went on, lots of interesting comments that came out of our front office. So, and then of course the rule changes. So we're going to talk about all of those things to begin with. And then of course we're going to take some Patreon questions. You guys put some really good ones out there this week, so I'm excited about that for sure. But let's go ahead and start with these, the league meetings. So first and foremost, I am going to admit, I admitted this in our group chat, that when the coach's picture came out, I had to Google our head coach, remember what he looked like, because they all looked exactly like him. I was just like, which one is he again? Oh yeah, we're right next to hipster home brewer where he should be. So yeah, that was really funny, but it was interesting to see how he would do right at his first coaches meeting and league meeting, and how he would do so. But he made a couple of interesting comments, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on them. So both he and John Schneider mentioned Jamal Adams when they were I think they were both asked about him. And both of them left kind of the door open, sort of, kind of, to possibly bringing him back, but in a completely different role as a linebacker. I don't know. And of course, I want to say hi to Jeff first. Jeff, so glad to see you. Glad that you're here.
What's up, Dayna?
Hi. What are your thoughts on that? Was it just them paying nice homage to a player that they have respect for? Was there an inkling of any truth to that conversation?
Not really. I saw the full quote, and if you actually read the full quote, it really just sounds like they're being respectful to him. They even said at the end, like, if you saw the full quote out loud, he was just like, well, there's nothing going on right now, and we're not really looking at it. But if the opportunity does come up, and we're out of money, but if it does, we can look at it later. But like, I don't think Jamal is going to play for the league minimum. I don't know if that makes sense for him, given all he's gone through. And the more at first I was like, they gotta stop talking about this. Just move on, rip the Band-Aid off. It's over. I know John had some sketchy comments on the radio a couple weeks ago, still kind of double downing on that one. But yeah, seeing the full quote, it's much ado about nothing, for my opinion. I don't think there's any scenario where he's going to come back. The numbers don't make sense. The money doesn't make sense. I don't see anything there.
Yeah. Brian, I'm curious if he plays at all. Like, we all talked about that injury and how bad it was, and we could see him declining throughout the season. I don't know that he plays at all.
I think you're right. It's if you were putting odds on this, and I'm sure somewhere there's a prop bet you could make.
Of course.
I don't know that Jamal Adams plays for anyone this year. I don't know if you remember. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this was a troll tweet. But
it's hard to keep them straight, right?
it seemed plausible that Jamal's agent had talked to the Jets about possibly coming back, and that the response was yikes. I know that wasn't real, but I think that's probably what most people look at his tape right now and see. We did see, I don't know if you saw this, Grant Cohen, who is one of the best trollers out there. He did put out a tweet like, should the 49ers sign Jamal Adams?
I did see that. Oh, the responses. So good.
I don't think the way Jamal played last year is NFL caliber after the first couple of games. And unless he can demonstrate to a team that he is significantly jumped ahead injury-wise, health-wise of where he was physically, I don't think he'll be on any roster. And so I think there's a small chance that the Seahawks were being sincere in that. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, but the linebacker position's not exactly overflowing with talent. And if there's a guy that they can bring in as a flyer and see if maybe he can help as a backup, a rotational guy, maybe they would, because Jeff said this before, and he's right. If Jamal Adams is anywhere close to what he used to be, he's kind of an ideal guy for Mike Macdonald's defense, but he just hasn't been close to what he used to be. So I think it's unlikely, but not completely impossible.
Yeah. In this league, nothing's impossible, I don't think. So, Brian, I'm going to stick with you. Mike Macdonald. I got to think of a nickname for him. There's too many Mike McDaniel, Mike McDonald.
I just call him Mac.
Barthick. I know, but apparently he doesn't like that. I don't know.
I don't care.
Oh, I know. Well, I'm sure. I'm
it's
sure
convenient
that
for me. That's what matters.
Daniel doesn't like me calling him hipster homebrewer either, but I'm gonna anyway. So, he made a comment in a long comment, but in the middle, he said he was trying to build up the middle of the defensive line. Have you seen any evidence of that from the things that they have done in this offseason? Do you think that tips anybody's hat toward, what they might be thinking in the draft?
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff's brought this up before with Joel Klatt and what he has talked about on some of his shows and guest appearances on Brock and Salk. Mike Macdonald talks about a run wall, and he talks about the spine of his defense, up the middle being a really important part of the defense. And I think the evidence of that is who was their number one priority in free agency that they paid $21.5 million to? Leonard Williams. Who was the guy that they brought in that was an addition to the defensive line? Hankins, who's a 330-pound dude. I think there is evidence, and if you look at the Ravens' defensive line, their defensive tackles, I'm talking about nose tackles like Travis Jones, you're talking about Michael Pierce. These guys are 330, 350. You look at Michigan, who came out last year from the Michigan defense, Mazi Smith, 335. And it's a defensive tackle-centric defense in Michigan. So I do think that he is going to value and prioritize bulk in the middle of his line differently than Pete Carroll did. And I think it's going to be a very different defense, which I'm looking forward to. But the question for us, and I'd be curious about, John Schneider historically has been the exact opposite. How much of that was coaching and preferences versus him? But he's always looked for the cheapest possible interior defensive lineman and the cheapest possible interior offensive lineman. And so far this offseason, he's still pretty much done that other than the Leonard Williams deal. So that's where we'll see in the draft. If Byron Murphy's sitting there and Troy Fautanu is sitting there and they pick neither of them, I will lose my freaking mind. If they pick somebody else, if they trade back, that's something else. But I want what Mike Macdonald, I think, wants, which is a strong middle of your defense.
Yeah. Jeff, you agree?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that Klatt, that Brian mentioned, Klatt went on the radio and he did a podcast where I noticed last week where he made a pretty good case that Mike Macdonald is going to love Byron Murphy. And it's funny, Brian actually put out a tweet last week of all the defensive tackles they have on the roster. And I texted Brian, I'm like, oh, well, I guess there goes Byron Murphy. I'm like, there's just no numbers there. And then I started thinking about it more once I saw that podcast. And Jaron Reed's in the last year of his deal. Draymond Jones is very likely in the last year of his contract. He signed a 4-year deal, but the third year it's set up like Will Dissly's. There's a clear exit strategy there. I don't know what they think of Mike Morris or Cam Young, and then I'm like, maybe they will want a defensive tackle in the draft. And then we come out and he uses the exact same term that Klatt talked about. And Klatt said, because he did so many Michigan games, he sat down with Mike Macdonald for like an hour one time, just going over philosophy. And everything he talked about was based on building this run wall. And it's not a surprise to see them go and sign Jonathan Hankins, 330-pound guy who played with Aiden Dirty last year. And now I'm wondering, okay. And then Mike comes out at the owners' meetings, and I was kind of annoyed nobody tweeted out. I got to give some of them. At first, I was like, where are the quotes from this coach's breakfast? Like every other team I'm seeing on I follow a lot of beat writers, and I'm like, I see all these like extensive quotes. And with John, we're just like, oh, here's 3 quick things. They want to bring back Jamal Adams, maybe. I'm like, where the hell are – and then I read some of the articles. I was like, oh, Macdonald's quotes were really interesting. And he talked about philosophy and the run wall. And one of the things he said is, to play in my defense, you got to blitz. You got to be good at blitzing. And it was like, okay, that's why Jerome Baker was an interesting guy for them, who was known for blitzing. That really impacts. We looked at linebackers. I know Brian's done that. Who can blitz? Like Junior Colson's a guy we looked at pretty well. And I found Macdonald really interesting. Every time Schneider talks, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure about this guy. Every time Macdonald talks, like, I'm intrigued. And like, he really has like a vision and he really has a plan. And sure, there's questions about whether he could have got better inside linebackers or better safeties, but it seems like it's very clear what he wants to do. Even some of the comments of him talking about like Devin Witherspoon or even Darrell Taylor were interesting. And it was different. And he talked this when he was talking about Nuosu. I don't know if you saw any of those quotes. Like, he was raving about Nuosu's film last year. So I found Macdonald really, really interesting. Schneider kind of just says the same things over and over, and I'm a little sick of it when he talks. I want to see something other than
You know what I'm kind of curious about, though, is I was thinking about this today. Mike Macdonald is so genuine and forthcoming in his conversations. Like, he pretty much answers questions that are asked. I mean, he won't give you all the stuff, but he will answer. When things get rough and there's things that Dave Pearson, PR guy, saying don't talk about, and I'm really curious how he's going to be in those moments, because someone like him who's pretty genuine, we'll see. We'll see. He may not be able to hide the truth. So I'm curious about that.
He reminds me a lot of John Harbaugh, like the way he talks, and not Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh.
Very, very calculated. Yeah, for sure. He also talked about defensive position flexibility. It sounds like he wants to change some things up. You know, Seattle is kind of known for doing the same thing over and over in defense and all that. So that'll be interesting to how he comes up. What was interesting to me about John's presser and conversation was more that he was really hyped up on this is not rebuilding, we're always going after a championship. Do you think that even if they considered this like an actual rebuilding year, which with the amount of money they spent, obviously I don't think that's the case, but do you think that that he would ever even admit to that, even when asked? It just feels so like, oh, are you rebuilding it? I would think as a front office, I would take that as an insult, that you don't think the team I'm putting together is good enough to contend for anything. You know, maybe you can get away with that when you have brand new head coach, rookie quarterback, whatever, but it just seems like it was kind of insulting. And he seemed to kind of answer it that way. But you're right, Jeff, in the fact that he went ahead and said that, you know, we're not rebuilding and we're doing this and we're doing that. And it felt very politician-y to me. So when he talks, I think that you're right about that he feels kind of very much like a politician. He did say one thing, though, that I think got Brian a little worked up. So Brian, I want to talk to you about this. He talked about how the offensive line was not complete, which I think everyone here would completely agree with. But then there's been a couple of names that have been thrown around. Laken Tomlinson and Cody Whitehair. And Brian's reaction to those names were not fantastic. Brian, talk to us about that a little bit.
It's just frustrating. And this gets back to what we were just talking about a bit. I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it. Jim Harbaugh, who everybody knows I hate with like a passion, had a video going around, and he talked about that the only position group that's not dependent on anybody else and that helps every other position group on the team is the offensive line. And I won't go into all the details of what he was saying, but I agree. That's how I see football. It's part of why I, for a long time, have seen receiver as overvalued, because it is the most dependent on other position groups succeeding in order for that position to actually have success. And you have seen teams like the Rams this year invest heavily in the interior line as they built the lineup over a couple of off seasons. You've seen other teams invest heavily. You've seen Andy Reid invest, in a center and in other positions to improve that line. And John Schneider, it feels very much like he is trying to prove a point that he has a different perspective and that he doesn't care what the league says. He's got it right. They've got it wrong. And that he's going to go on the cheap for the guard position, and that he's going to go on the cheap for the center position. And he's going to not just do that free agency wise. He's going to do that draft wise. You're not going to get a pick spent on interior offensive linemen until the 4th round. Like Anthony Bradford, who had a fine rookie season, is now the way that the Seahawks have to improve. The only way that they can improve on the offensive line is for Anthony Bradford to take a massive step forward. Like he has to be a significantly better player than he was last year, which is possible, but I don't like those odds. I don't like playing odds that way with such an important position. And so then what does John Schneider do? He hasn't done it yet, but it looks like he's going to do. He goes on the cheap for the interior line. And Laken Tomlinson used to be an okay guard. It's been a few years since he has been. He is someone you can plug in there and run out a team, but he's not a guy that's going to be a key to a great offensive line. If you go Cody Whitehair, I honestly had not heard of. And
really, he used to be really good.
Yeah.
Apparently.
He was like 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the classic Seahawk move. Like,
So,
I remember there were people who really wanted to draft him.
Well, interestingly, a guy that I'm going to feature for a little bit deeper dive from a prospect perspective on Friday with Eric McLean, who's analyst for the ACC network and ESPN, is Graham Barton, who is the Duke interior offensive lineman, who some people think is the best interior offensive lineman, and was compared by Matt Miller, a draft analyst, to Cody Whitehair. So, you know, it all comes around. Long way of saying, Dayna, I think John either has to demonstrate that he's right, that you can have a great offensive line and a great offense, or one or the other. Like maybe you can have a great offense without a great interior offensive line, or that you can go cheap and draft guys late and still have a great offensive line, or he's just got to acknowledge that he's wrong. And it's time to either invest a 1st round, 2nd round pick in a quality interior offensive lineman, or sign one and spend the money on it. But you can't just keep going with the Laken Tomlinsons of the world and then drafting a 4th rounder later and hoping you hit. That is not a way to build the most important, potentially the most important position group on the entire roster. So that's my continued frustration. And it's the reason that this offseason isn't an A for me. I'm really pretty happy with what the Seahawks have done this offseason, except for the way they've handled that specific position.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watched that video that Harbaugh put out of the evil Harbaugh. And I agree with you. Normally, I can't stand the guy, but he was just so dead on that. So I really encourage people to go find that video. It was very interesting and completely true. Jeff, do you have any faith that there will be significant and decent amount of draft capital, picks, whatever, on the offensive line with what they have right in front of them right now? Because they were very positive, said, oh, Abe Lucas is coming back. We're real happy about that. We were real happy with how X player and Y player played. It felt like they were hedging their bet just a little bit.
Do I have faith? No. I don't think they have the benefit of the doubt. And I think the draft is really, and they've alluded to this, and I know the beat writer, Bob Condotta's been talking about this, but they seem to like this draft class at guard.
Okay.
But look at their capital right now. They have the 1, the late 3, and the 2 4s. It lines up for that 4th round guard pick. It's where they've taken those guards in the past. It's a deep guard group. The way John has drafted in the past, that they cluster positions, and I know they're going to have a lot of numbers there this year. Like Bradford was a guy last year they drafted and we were really excited about because of his athletic profile. He had like the craziest athletic profile for his size, but he came in overweight and he looked sloppy last year. And he was a project to begin with. He wasn't a polished player. And so he looked like that. Plus, he was out of shape, it looked like. And so to come in and just say, oh, maybe he'll be better with better coaching, or maybe he'll be better in the second year. It's hope is not a plan. And I don't see any reason to believe, other than them alluding to the draft class being good, that they're going to do something they haven't done before. And maybe Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff could influence something differently. I know they put a lot of stock in coaches in the past, but until they actually do it, I don't see how you can have faith, especially how their veteran approach in free agency has been identical to how Ted Thompson. And if any of you were Packers fans or followed Ted Thompson in the past, Schneider has a lot of his tendencies, and this was his mentor both in Seattle and Green Bay. It drove Packers fans nuts for years because they won't even touch free agency. Like the one time they'd signed Charles Woodson and ended up leading to a Super Bowl. But if you think Seattle's frustrating free agency, you should see what the Packers used to be like. And this was his mentor, and we see it all the time. Green Bay did not draft first-round guards. They did not draft first-round centers. But they were really good at finding players. Seattle has not found almost a single player that have their approach. So I don't think they've learned from this. I don't think they've adjusted. And until you see anything differently, I don't see how you can realistically have faith.
Yeah.
Just quickly on that, just before we move off it, Dayna, I want to be clear that I still believe Anthony Bradford's an interesting player, and I am eager to see what Huff and Grubb, both offensive line guys, can do with him, because those guys took over a Husky offensive line that had taken a step back, and they turned it into the best offensive line in college football. So I do think there's reason to be hopeful that this coaching will help. But to Jeff's point, that is still a risk to just like, I'd rather them stack up plan A, B, C, or at least A and B. And right now at right guard, the plan is plan A and nothing else. And that's uncomfortable. And the plan at left guard is plan nothing. There's no plan. There are backups. There are no starting caliber players on the roster. That's not okay. So that's where I think there's, some frustration. But before we, you take us wherever you're going to take us, Dayna, I want to ask you, like, your energy level about the Seahawks now just seems so much lower. I don't know if I'm just misreading it, but I want to ask you, like, am I right? And if so, why? Like, you're always the most optimistic about the Seahawks. Tell us, like, what's going on in your head.
Well, it's funny. So it's kind of just a gut reaction. So took my son to dinner last night. My husband and I did. And NFL Network, I don't know if you guys watched it, was playing the Seahawks Lions game from last year. And while we were eating, and I'm watching it, and that was a fun game, right? That was a really fun game. I really enjoyed that one. And we're kind of watching it. And then when one of Jared Goff's passes was picked off and run back for a touchdown. And what did? They instantly went to Pete. And I was like, somebody punched me in the gut. It was so reaction. And I was like, oh. And I think this is what it is. I was always a Pete lover. I know there's lots of Pete haters out there. I get it. You guys can feel however you wanted to feel about him. And it's not about his coaching. It was about who he was. And I loved this team for their energy and for the culture and for how they were always fun. And, my son turned around to me at one point and looked around. He goes, what's going to happen to Techno Tuesdays or whatever it was? And I was like, it's gone. We have a head coach that is the color beige now. And so I think that's where some of my worry is, that I think that they've lost some of that spark. And that was one of the things that I really loved about Seattle. I am excited that we'll see new. I want to see a new defense. I want to see something different on the field, because what's been going on has not been happening. But like someone said it in chat one of the times, it says it's like you're going to a new school, first day of school in a new school where you've never been before. So you don't know what to expect. And then we were having the conversation about, well, it's really just kind of a toss up this year. So I think it's more of the unexpected for me than it is anything else. But I'm excited. I don't know if I should be excited about this head coach. New head coaches make me very nervous. But I do love that Geno is still there. And I do love that we have some of those players, but I am excited to see what shows up during training camp. I think that will be really interesting for me. So
I appreciate that. And I think you and I have had traded a couple comments about this before. You're someone who likes to know what you're going to get a little bit and be able to see the plan. And it's, you don't know Mike Macdonald yet. And You don't know what this is going to be like yet and how they're going to react and what kind of team. So I get it. It's very different than me. And I think some other folks, there's a lot of folks in your camp. I see folks still posting about Pete Carroll and longing for, even though like what's going on with Pete and is he okay? And I mean, I love Pete Carroll to death.
He was family.
Yeah, of course. He's the best coach the Seahawks have ever had and brought the team to their only Super Bowl and an amazing person. Like everything's great about Pete. As a football fan, like Dayna and Jeff, just quickly going through it. I mean, I have been, and Jeff knows this, I've been the Pete defender, and we're not going to make this a Pete show, but I've been the Pete defender for a long time on this show and in our chats and all this stuff, to the point I would get so pissed off at the guys. But in any event, going back to 2019, 5 years ago, hopeful that the team will be better. Defense comes in 26th in the league in yards allowed. Okay, well, maybe 2020, like the Jamal Adams thing, it'll be better. We'll figure something out. 22nd in the league in yards allowed, 15th in points allowed. Go to 2021, 28th in the league in yards allowed. 2022, 26th in the league in yards allowed. Last year, 30th in the league in yards allowed. And in a lot of those years, they were able to kind of make do because the offense was top 10 in points allowed in a lot of those years. But then last year, the offense fell off as well. They were 17th in points allowed. It was the 21st ranked offense and the 30th ranked defense, and it was a shitty team. And you're a defensive person. And so I'm not going to try to convince you of anything because I know for you'll need to see it. You'll see it and then you'll react to it.
Yep.
For me, I am looking ahead of time for every bit of evidence that I can find that something's going to be different. And one of the things I talked about on the show this morning was people are like, well, yeah, they didn't do a lot in free agency, like Jeff was saying. If you look at the roster, you can't say that the roster's better. That's true. But remember when Pete Carroll and John Schneider first came in, what happened with Red Bryant? He had been a nothing defensive tackle. Dan Quinn moved him to the biggest 320-pound defensive end you'll ever see, and he was a key part of the Super Bowl team. What happened with Chris Clemens, who got rescued from Philadelphia and was a middling player and then had multiple years of 11+ sacks? What happened with Brandon Browner, 6'4" corner from the CFL, who was doing nothing, became a Pro Bowl corner? Byron Maxwell was a star in Seattle, went elsewhere and was nothing because the coaching and the scheme fit the players in a different way. So the story for the Seahawks this year for improvement, and I think people are looking for this, and the way I'm thinking, there's two ways the Seahawks are going to improve this year. One is through development of young players. They've had 2 good draft classes, and those players, no matter what the coaching does, no matter what anyone, those 2 draft classes have to take steps forward. They have to get better. The Anthony Bradfords of the world, those guys, Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, they have to get better and they have to be healthy. Devin Witherspoon has to be even better this year. And then the other thing that has to happen is that the coaches have to utilize the talent on the field significantly better than the way it was used on offense and on defense. And I think there's reason to feel optimistic that at the very least, they're going to be utilized differently than they have been. It's going to be a massively different defensive scheme, and it's going to be a massively different offensive scheme, and it's going to be run by 2 people that have proven that they know what they're doing on either side of the ball. And so recently, not 10 years ago. So that's why, just a message out there. Like because I think a lot of people are in your shoes, and I wanted to share a little bit about why I am more and more energized about this team, even though you look at the roster and you're like, well, what's changed?
Right. And I'm not pessimistic. I don't think that we're all of a sudden going to be, the worst team in the league. It's going to be a disaster. I mean, it's possible because you never know with the new coach, but I'm not really worried about that. It's more, it's for me, I'm excited to see what gets put on the field and how different it'll be, and to be able to watch that. That's from an analytical point of view. I want to see the chess pieces and how they're going to move differently. But for me, there is, and I have said, I'm very type A. I like to know kind of what's coming. And so this offseason of unknown is just a little unsettling for me. But I think once we get into training camp and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get the feel of it, that my mind, we put it ease a little bit.
I get it.
Yeah.
I very much.
It's so funny that Evan and Dayna have completely flipped.
I know.
It's crazy because Evan's been the one being like, what if they're really good? Or like, there's 20% chance they're really good. Or like, I saw his tweet the other day, like, I haven't been this excited in 6 years. And like, it's so wild. But yeah, Brian's right though. Like, the thing that Macdonald did really well, and it's going to be so interesting to see if it carries over. Because again, I've talked about this one. I mean, coordinator and head coach are totally different jobs. But he's calling his player utilization was as good as any coach in the league last year. And Seattle's, you're not entering like the 2010 Seahawks. Like, their defensive talent is good. It's not elite, it's good. And almost at every level, they have talent. And they believe, just asking around, that they're going to see a lot better usage of their defensive line with this coaching staff than what they got with the last one. And Clint Hurt and the Vic Fangio scheme, it was a disaster. In the run game, it was a disaster. Like, they developed, Chetty Owosu was one of their success stories. That worked out really well. Boy, you saw some flashes last year for that sustained period. But like, if you look at their group on the defensive line was 2 years ago when Clint Hurt took over, and it was Shelby Harris and Al Woods and Poona Ford and Quentin Jefferson. We're like, okay, this defensive line is pretty good. It's fine. Most of those guys are either out of the league now or they're backups. And they've really turned this group over pretty well. Like, Leonard Williams is a player. Like, Jaron Reed had a really good year last year. Draymond Jones is paid like a stud, but it's going to be
you never know, right? You never know.
Well, you hope that they get more than they did last year, but
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
this group, it's just going to be really interesting to me. Like, I'm more in the Brian camp. Like, by the end of the last year, like, I hated watching that defense to the point where like that Pittsburgh game was so painful, and ultimately, I think it did lead to Pete's departure, and I just couldn't watch another year of that. And even I don't have high expectations for the team this year. It took 2 years for Macdonald to build the defense in Baltimore. It really took until they got Roquan Smith. But I just want to – every game to me is building to something. And I want to see steady progression on defense. I want to see who are the core players here. Can they maximize? Can they get – like, is Derek Hall, can he get anything out of that guy? Like, they have a really interesting – like, I think their potential with Witherspoon and how they can utilize him is going to be so interesting. Tariq Woolen took a huge step back last year. Can he get going? And there's not a lot of guys I think are really deficient. Like, I was surprised they brought back Darrell Taylor, but Macdonald seems to see something there. Maybe it's just like a year to prove himself. I would have walked away from him personally. I thought he was too one-dimensional, but every game is going to be really interesting to me. I don't go in like last year where I thought, okay, this could be an 11-win team. I have no idea what to expect, and that's kind of exciting for me.
Before we keep going, I just want to thank Matt B for the super chat. He asks, any concern about the Ravens' run defense falling off a cliff in the second half of last season? I mean, I look more at how the defense performed, and in the second half of last season, this team held Justin Herbert and the Chargers to 10, held the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were playing well with Trevor Lawrence, to 7, held the 49ers to 19 and turned them over 5 times, held the Dolphins to 19, turned them over 3 times, held the Steelers, well, it doesn't really matter, but held the Texans to 10 in the playoffs and held the Chiefs to 17, including, I think, none in the second half. If the rush defense eroded a little bit, which I haven't looked closely at, not really that concerned. I care about how the defense played, and the defense was pretty impenetrable against the best coordinators, the best quarterbacks, and varying types of schemes. So answer your question is no, I'm not concerned about that.
Before we move on to Patreon questions, because we're going to do those next, though, to Jeff's point where he was saying that he didn't know what to expect from this team, they kind of the over-unders came out today about, how many games they think teams are going to win and not win. And Brian, you put out a tweet that had all of the NFC on there, and the Seattle Seahawks, they have at 7.5 wins. They have, I think San Francisco was 11. I mean, it kind of went off whatever their season was last year. So at 7.5 wins, do you think that's high? You think that's low? Where are you at with 7.5 wins on a team where we have no idea what they're going to look like?
Jeff, you want to go first?
That's about right to me. To me, this is one of like the betting things you can really take advantage of. Because to me, I was saying this in our chat there, nothing dictates the year-to-year growth of a team more than the draft. Free agency is usually much to about nothing. Like you'll get a guy here and there. There'll be a rare splash where you'll really change your team. But what dictates a team's ceiling, like what made the Seahawks good when everyone thought they would suck a couple of years ago, is they nailed the draft. Until we see what they do with this draft, 7.5 is about right. But it could be like if they come out and blow this draft like they did with 2000, like LJ Collier and some of those, they might go under. So I think it's a little crazy to put these out so early, and I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage because some of these numbers are going to look remarkably different. Like, remember what Houston looked like at this point last year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet today from Mina Kimes that said Houston long-term outlook might be better than anyone in the NFL. After 1 year of where we thought they would look like it. Remember what the Rams looked like at this point? They would have had like a 4.5 and they crushed the draft. They looked like the second best team in the NFC last year for a lot of the season. So 7.5 halves is about right because of just with the offensive line right now, it's so deficient at guard. You can't really go higher. They were only 8.5 last year from what I remember. So I don't think it's relevant until we see what they do in the draft. That dictates their floor and that dictates their ceiling. If they botch this draft, 7.5 is, I think, is spot on.
I don't bet. I don't sports bet. I would hammer the over on 7.5 for the Seahawks.
Really?
Hammer it. I don't see. Look, the reason I think the Seahawks are the perfect team to have the wrong number, a more pessimistic number out there. And the reasons are, I won't go into all of them, but a couple of the reasons. Geno Smith is just a guy that nobody, there's Seahawks fans that still just don't give him credit and don't believe he's that good and don't realize how good of a quarterback he is. I think Geno Smith is a really good quarterback and will be playing in a much better offense than he played in the last few years for a guy in Shane Waldron who had never called a bleeping play before he came to Seattle. Like, he was not the guy, and it showed. So that's way off. I think that JSN started the year last year injured and not involved in the offense in the right way. He is going to be utilized 10 times better than he was, and he could be the best receiver on this roster. I know DK is great. JSN has the potential to be a more consistently impactful player and a harder player to continually guard than DK Metcalf. That's without any changes elsewhere. The offensive line last year was injured the entire year. It was the most injured offensive line year you'll ever see for the Seahawks, knock on wood. It was awful. And let's hope. We heard Abe Lucas is supposed to be back. Hopefully he's okay. If he is and he can play, that's a massive change right there. I think Charles Cross hopefully will be healthier, take a step forward. I think with better offensive line coaching. So I think that there's reasons to be optimistic there. And then defensively, people are looking at these players based off of what we just talked about, years of how they've been used and not about how Mike Macdonald's going to utilize them. I think it is very realistic that the Seahawks will cut 2 to 5 points off of their points allowed with the same players. I think that's realistic with the change in coaching and the change in scheme. I also think that this offense could score 2 to 5 points more than it did last year. And so at the outside, you're talking about a 10-point per game swing in point differential. That over the course of a year, that's the most optimistic, I think. You're talking about like adding significant wins to a team that was nine wins last year. So my like over under on the Seahawks is 9. Like, I think that's a fair number for the Seahawks. Basically treading water with last year. You never know like how this, but 7.5, a step back. I don't think so. I really don't.
And the schedule's a lot better this year.
I think it is. Some people say it's really hard, but I mean, like, last year's schedule, not only the teams, but the way that they ordered them and at what times, the Thursday to Thursday games and all that crap, that was a really rough schedule last year.
Yeah. Yeah. God, that middle part, October, November, all that was just gross. So, all right, let's get to these Patreon questions because there's quite a few of them. And thanks to everyone. This is a perfect time to remind you to go join patreon.com/hawkblogger. And you too then can join the Slack channel and ask us all these questions. So we appreciate everyone that takes the time to do that. All right. So first question. Anaxum. I know I say that wrong, and I'm so sorry to whoever you are. I apologize. After watching the morning blog, I wonder how you think our defense will be ranked at the end of the year. Feel free to prognosticate about the draft and who we will get. But barring that, with the talent at hand, how do you think Macdonald will boost the defense, finishing better or worse in DVOA? And then they go on to add also Grubb with JSN regarding how much, which you just talked about a little bit, about regarding how much shade thrown by JSN about Waldron. Do you think Grubb will help unlock our receivers in tight end group?
I forgot about that. That was one of the funniest things this offseason, right? I mean, that was so funny. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, Brian just talked about the player utilization to a T. I don't see how they can be worse than last year. Their defense was atrocious. So I think they can easily raise themselves to like the low teens, somewhere at the bottom there. But I think they're like a draft pick away on the defensive line, away from being like a high draft pick away from where you can really see that jump up. But I think they're pretty competent. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can bring in that linebacker, if they can bring another body there. But I think they have the requisite talent. Like we all thought this defense would be pretty good last year. They lost their linebackers. They turned them over. But coaching alone should be able to – and Tariq Woolen was pretty horrible last year relative to what we thought. So he was still a solid cover player, but didn't make any plays really. I think it's just with Macdonald and what he did with Kyle Van Noy, who's not nearly as talented as a lot of the players they have. And Clowney's a guy who's trending towards being out of the league. And so if you can see like that kind of production with those guys, and they don't have the middle linebackers that Baltimore had, and they don't have a Kyle Hamilton, but I think they have a lot of good pieces here to start with. Like typically head coaches inherit rosters that look like Tennessee. Like they inherited a lot of talent. Albert Breer talked about that the other day. So I think it's very possible they jump up over 10 spots this year, potentially even more if they really find some more pieces in the draft. Because I don't know if that's Draymond Jones, I don't know if that's draft pick, but they need another frontline player up front to really take that jump. But they're not working with like a bare cupboard here. Like there's a lot there. The coaches got to utilize it. They got to work together as a group, and hopefully they're just not running a Darrell Taylor every play like they have been the last few years. So
that is the truth. All right. So the next one, Brian, I'll give this one to you. Are there any of the non-quarterbacks worth trading up for?
Short answer is no. I think it's generally bad form to trade up, especially in the first round for a non-quarterback. When you see trade ups for non-quarterback players, position players, that's third round, fourth round, sometimes second round, but definitely like they traded up for DK Metcalf in the second round. They traded up for Tyler Lockett in the third round. I think they traded up for KJ Wright.
Aaron Reed and our buddy Darrell Taylor.
I think they traded up for Michael Dixon, and I think we're laughed at for doing so, but I'm very happy with that pick. So I just don't think that it's something you're going to see. I don't think there's any player that's so dominant. And the fact is, the way these drafts are starting to look now, they're all mock drafts, and you never know. But it seems almost 100% that Jared Verse, Troy Fautanu, Byron Murphy, Talisi Fuaga, who am I forgetting? There's another guy on that list, but another guy who's really good. is going to be there at 16. And all of those guys, to me, are top 10. Oh, Brock Bowers, that's the other guy. All of those guys are top 10 talents. So I don't think you have to trade anywhere.
How would you react if they took Bowers?
You know, it would be hard a little bit because it's not the position that I think elevates them the most. But what do we always talk about?
Take the best player.
Get the god dang blue chip players.
Mm-hmm.
And if your eval on Brock Bowers is this is a top 5 talent in this draft, and you get him at 16, I will not criticize that pick. How about you?
I'd be very conflicted for the exact same reason. I would just be like, why did we sign Noah Fant? Why? It's not the position I want. They need the line of scrimmage, but like, I've been the one for years being like, draft like the Ravens. That is exactly what the Ravens would do. And everyone would be like, how the hell did the Ravens end up with Brock Bowers? Like this happened with Kyle Hamilton a couple years ago. I don't think safety is perceived a big need for them. And all the Seahawks fans were like, they can't draft Kyle Hamilton. They have so much invested in safety. And now like Hamilton looks like the best player from that whole draft class. And so I'd be a little shook, but ultimately, like, I'd be able to convince myself in like 10 seconds into it.
You'd be all right with it. All right, let's go to the next one. So it's another, let's see. This one's from Jason. It says, Coach Mike said this week that the Seahawks defense will be defined by versatility, strength up the middle, and that players will need to be prepared to rush the passer. Which player on the current roster will be successful in this situation, and who may have their weaknesses exposed? Probably pick one of each. Brian, why don't we start with you?
I didn't hear the first part. Can you repeat the first part again?
Well, he was just talking about how Mike Macdonald said that the Seahawks defense will be defined by versatility. So, so which players on the current roster will be successful in this situation where they have to be prepared to rush the passer, and who may have their weaknesses exposed?
Yeah, the easy answer, and I'll try to give a non-easy answer, but the easy answer is Devin Witherspoon will be. I mean, he is made to be versatile. He can rush the passer. He can defend the run. He can play the pass. He can play inside. He can play outside. So there's every reason to think Devin Witherspoon is going to be a kid in a candy store in this defense. I think that Jerome Baker is another newer name that's interesting as a guy who has had a lot of success as a blitzer. Jeff mentioned that earlier, and has had success as a deep dropper and man coverage guy. I think this will be unpopular for some group of Seahawks fans, but we haven't seen the impact plays from our linebackers for a few years where they are the ones getting the quarterback. They are the ones making a tackle for loss or, picking off a pass. It's been a while. I think Jerome Baker could be a bigger playmaker. He'll have other faults, but I think he could be a bigger playmaker than they've had at the position. So those are two guys on the positive side. As far as getting exposed, the easy one there is Darrell Taylor. This is a guy that has not proven that he can defend the run and has also been pretty consistent as a pass rusher. So he's got to show up this year. But the other guy that I'm curious about is Tariq Woolen. I really am not sure how he's going to fit in this. And just to end on a positive note, one other guy that I'm curious about on the positive side is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant started playing safety last year. He's played corner. He was injured for a lot of the year. I think he's very heady. I think he's a smart dude. And I'm just curious if Mike Macdonald will figure out a way to utilize him. If Jarek Reed hadn't been injured, I think Jarek Reed would be a guy I would be really excited about. But they're saying maybe he'll be ready by the beginning of the year. But if that's the case, I kind of assume Jarek Reed's going to have a red shirt year a little bit. He probably won't be himself this year. But those are some guys that stand out to me.
Out of all those guys, Jeff, do you find anyone else that maybe might take a turn?
I don't know about a turn, but I think Rayshawn Jenkins makes a lot more sense hearing the coaches talk about him. And they were very defined with how they would use Quandre and Jamal. I think Jordan Love might actually be a really, really good fit too. Mm-hmm. So I think Rayshawn Jenkins he's a little older and like he probably isn't going to be an all-pro by any means, but I think he is a very versatile player that can play the run. and he really gives you a spine. He's made some really big plays for Jacksonville. I was asking a buddy there who I know is a Jags fan. He's like, this guy's just always around the ball, and they really liked him. So I think he's actually a good fit with like a versatile defense. I think Brian took the answer straight out of my. Jerome Baker was exactly what I thought about. Just like his strength is blitzing. He's not the best in run defense, but he can cover a lot of ground. He's a little smaller. So I think I think he fits really, really well. I think Leonard Williams is a guy. He can play all over the defensive line. Obviously, they're paying him a ton of money. I know some people call their free agency frugal. The guy made $21.5 million. Like, how many people had a bigger APY in free agency than that? So you can't call it frugal. Your own players count. So I think Leonard Williams is a guy. You can move him all over the defensive line. You can play different fronts. And I think he can really be maximized if someone like Hankins can take on blocks. And Jaron Reed had a really good year last year in that other scheme. So they have some players there. And I think Brian hit Darrell Taylor's the obvious one, because the thing with him is when he came on the field the last 2 years, and it really killed him the first half of 2 years ago where they had to bench him. Where when he was on the field, teams knew exactly what he could do and what he couldn't. And Witherspoon's such a good answer because if you watch Michigan play the last couple of years, they have this corner named Mikey Sandstrom, who's going to be a top 3 round pick this year. Just like the way they use him, he's a smaller corner, just really versatile. He's like the guy like I can see just Baltimore drafting and just being a stud there. The way they maximized him and putting Witherspoon in that role, who's just a far more talented player, man, it's like he is the dream fit for that Baltimore scheme.
Awesome.
I think Nwosu is a guy who could be really interesting.
It's going to be fun, right? Because we don't know for sure. And I think it's interesting that you say that people think Seattle was frugal. Don't they have like the least amount of cap space left after all of that? So I don't know. I don't know that.
Yeah, people don't seem to understand if you don't make splashes.
Yeah.
But if you spend all your money, if I give you $100 to spend at Costco and you spend $98, you're not frugal. You can argue if they're good spenders or not.
That's right. All right. Derek Woods asks, Brian, I'll give this one to you. Which of our positions of greater strength, so wide receiver, cornerback, QB, do you think is most likely to still be added to in the draft?
So our strongest position group. So that's a really good question. I've been going receiver quite often in the draft for the Seahawks. There's so many quality players so the combination of how many good, like really good players are available there that will be available probably into the 3rd round. And the fact that while it's strong this year, Tyler Lockett's playing his last year. I think having 3 great receivers is a good thing anytime you can do it. I think receiver's probably the one. Quarterback's right there too, but I would say receiver's the one that stands out to me.
Awesome. All right. This is from Anders. It's for you, Brian. For your morning blogs have been turning me on to Devondre Sweat. I love DT with our first pick, and given we need to trade back, how would you feel about a double trade back scenario where we draft Sweat with our first pick? And then he attached an example below just so you could see.
I saw that draft. Okay. I actually saw that ahead of time. I loved that draft, by the way. So I haven't talked to you both about this, but I mean, Jeff knows I'm a big Devondre Sweat fan. And Dayna, I don't know if you know Devondre Sweat, but he is plays the University of Texas or played for. He is 362 pounds. He is a massive defensive tackle. And if this was the Seahawks of old, he wouldn't even be a consideration. It is not the kind of player that Pete Carroll drafted. It's not the kind of player that fit in their defense. He's just not a fit. He wouldn't have been an option. He is very much a fit for what Mike Macdonald does. We just talked about Pierce, the middle of their defense, 355 pounds. You talked about, Travis Jones, 340 pounds. Like, these are big, big dudes. Devondre Sweat generated the most physical force of any defensive tackle at the combine, over 1,000 pounds of force with his weight and how fast he moved in 10 yards. This is a guy that's really unique. And I think, excuse me, let me clear my throat. I think he is a one of one in this draft. There is no other. There's not like a secondary guy who is almost like Tavondre Sweat. There are other guys, as much as I like Byron Murphy, there are other guys. Michael Hall Jr. is kind of like Byron Murphy. Johnny Newton is kind of like Byron Murphy. You could kind of list a few guys. I don't think it's crazy to think that Tavondre Sweat may be a guy that could have the biggest impact on the Seahawks overall, or at least on the defense if they took him. So he has become my DT2, second ranked defensive tackle on the board. I think he has first round impact for the Seahawks, not for every team. And the reason that people have him lower is because he's essentially a 2-down player. He's not going to, at this point, he won't be on the field all the time. You don't generally take 2-down players in the first round. But I am very, very high on how Tavondre Sweat. There's nobody on this roster. Jaron Reed is not that guy. There's nobody on this roster that is a disruptive. Hankins that they signed, he is not a disruptive nose tackle. He is a hold the line nose tackle. Tavondre Sweat could blow up pinball, bowling pins is a better visual. So I'm a big fan. And yes, I would be okay if he ended up being their first pick. I think there's a lot worse that they could do.
Love it. All right. This one is from Eric. Jeff, I'm going to give this one to you. How do you interpret the signings this year as they relate to the team's longer-term design and makeup? Is this all about just getting through the current year and resetting next year, or is it somehow foundational for the team?
I thought that it was about setting up next year, but Schneider actually came out and seemed to make this seem like it was part of his strategy of free agency. And he was saying the way they approach free agency is they like to do 1 or 2 year deals. And a lot of cap people hate that because you can't push back the cap hits and you take a lot of the book brunt, which is why Seattle goes through cap space so quickly. And the Seahawks, Schneider said this week that they like to do 1 or 2 year deals because they can sell players on coming to Seattle, rebuilding their value. And for their standpoint, they can see if someone fits. And if they do, they can sign them again. And they talked about how they got Bennett and Averill. They're sort of hanging on to like the best free agent signings in franchise history and hoping they can replicate that. But that seems to be their strategy where they were going to bring in a Baker or a Dodson or a Jenkins, see how they fit in with the program. And if they work, they can give them another contract. It's not. And the one time they kind of went off that, Draymond Jones, which seemed like sort of a desperate move because they lost the bidding war on Zach Allen, kind of blew up in their face. And so initially I thought this was just, okay, they're taking the Jamal Adams hit this year. They're setting up the thing. They have a new head coach. It doesn't, I think I misread that one. I think a lot of us did. And Schneider outlined it pretty clearly. That is how they approach a lot of these free agents. They don't want to commit to a lot of years, so they end up taking dead money later. They would rather take the hit now, see if they fit in, see if it works, and if not, they move on. And I can't say that's really worked for them other than Averill and Bennett. Bradley McDougald maybe, but not a lot of success in that strategy. So this is by design. I know Bob Condotta talked about they don't have a lot of cap room next year. Not necessarily true. They can really open up cap room pretty easily. But I think a lot of us, I know Nathan and Evan, we're all like, okay, it's a rebuild year. Hearing Schneider talk, no, that's not the case.
And Schneider even said, he said, we didn't expect the cap to go up this much year. We have no idea what to expect next year. So it's always hard to talk about cap the following year unless you're like going to be in a huge hole. So we'll have to wait and see on that one for sure.
And so much has to do with how guys play. Like Lockett, Gino, Draymond Jones, like huge years for those guys.
Yeah. All right. So this next question is from Sam. Sam Brown. What is the absolute number one improvement you would like to see from last year to this year if only one thing was going to improve? And then the second half of that question is something else. So, all right, Brian.
If only one thing could improve, is that the question?
One thing could improve. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I'll have to say consistent. For me, it's offensive line play.
Okay.
Yeah, I will not expound on that, but yeah, because I've talked enough. But yes, offensive line play would be my one choice. It was my top priority going into free agency.
Yeah, that or run defense. I can't watch a run defense. That just sucks the life out of the third year now. Yeah,
that's a good one. All right. So Colin actually asked me a question. I think it's the first time ever anyone's ever asked me specifically a question on here. So I'm very excited. Thank you, Colin. It says, can you lay out what stands out about Joe Milton in later rounds that intrigues you so much? It said, I am too curious, but since I don't think you've had a chance to say on the pod yet. So it's so funny because at first, this whole thing with Joe Milton all came out of how tall he was. He was 6'5". And the guys in the chat like to give me a bad time that I'm a heightist. I keep saying he's too short. He's too short. I want to talk quarterback. But then I did watch him during the combine and I paid a little more attention to some of his highlight film. I will say this about him. He is 6'5". He's fast. He's athletic. He has a really good profile that way. He's horribly inconsistent. He can throw a long ball that is beautiful, but across the middle, he throws too hard. It's not great. So what intrigues me, what has continued to intrigue me is how athletic people talk about how he is, how he has all of these, things about him that you think he should be good, but I think he's been through what I think Emery and I were talking about it. My friend Emery Hunt and I were talking. He's been through 2 programs and not really changed much. And so I'm curious, as a low to no risk late round, third day, clear in the back, pickup, that what a pro coaching system could do for him. Could they tap into something there? Because he does have some bits and pieces. He's got some stuff and things that really look like it could be turned into something, but it would have to be a very low risk situation for me to actually be really okay with them picking him up. So that's kind of my spin. Mostly it started because he was 6'5", but just to bug Evan. I mean, more than anything, right? That's where the whole thing started. So
I have to tell you, Dayna,
yeah.
I did a mock draft this morning and I took Joe Milton in the 6th round because I think he's got enough in the toolbox that if he's around in the 6th round, I'm like, yeah, he's better than Josh Portis, and the guy, Alex Magoo, like he's got more talent than those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like who knows? I was interested in who's that guy that Holton Ahlers that they brought out in crazy, like he's got more talent than those guys. Yeah. And so I got roasted. People were like, oh, this draft was fine until you took Milton in the 6th. And I'm like, first of all, it's the 6th round, so shush. Like,
yeah, DTR went in the
bad 6th round pick.
Yeah, DTR went in like the 5th last year, and they've already blocked him with 2 quarterbacks. So like,
yeah, but yeah, I thought of you, Dayna, and I was like, Dayna would like this
thank
draft.
you.
She would have my back.
I agree. It's just he's interesting, right? He intrigues me a little bit. Like, what could be there? God, yeah. At his pro day, you see that? Oh, it was beautiful.
Oh, he put up some numbers at his pro day.
But again, shorts and a t-shirt, no one running at you. I get it, right? But at the same time, there's something there. There could be something there. And so as long as it's not going to kill your draft, why not take a flyer?
Speaking of quarterbacks, did any of you hear Howell on Brock and Sock today?
No.
It was the lowest energy quarterback interview I've ever heard. Brian, you're going to struggle with this one. Brian, you're going to struggle. I know you're like the type A personality guy. This is what Shane Waldron like. You're gonna struggle with this. I listened to it before.
I've been defending Mr. Howell
today. I'm
okay.
Like, this guy has no charisma at all. I think Schneider mentioned he's like kind of quiet. They're like, "What was the best thing about you?" He's like, "I can rally guys together." I'm like, "Oh my god, Brian, you're gonna struggle with this."
Okay. Noted. I'll put it on my playlist.
Good luck.
Oh, it's exactly what I was talking about. Like, where did the energy go? Like,
it was so low. Like, Salk was like trying to get him going and could not come close.
Give me something, kid. All right. The next question is from Nick S. The Seahawks pick is in at number 16. After the name is said, you shut off the TV. Who did they pick? I want an answer from both of you. Who would they pick at 16 that would make you so mad that you would just shut it off?
Oh, that's the question.
Yeah, that's my interpretation of it.
Wait, read it again. I thought it was
the Seahawks
guessing.
Pick is in at number 16. After the name is said, you shut off the TV. Who did they pick?
Oh, okay.
I think so. I don't know. Maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know, but I would think it would be bad if you're mad enough.
Is there any possible like good scenarios to turn off the TV?
You'd be like, we won. We're out. See you later.
All right. I this is good. This is gonna make me think. Jeff, you go first.
If they stay at 16 and pick Cooper DeJean, I will lose my shit. I saw a mock draft with him at 16 the other day.
He's good.
I know, but if they take like the guy like the Evans been tweeting out the pictures of him smiling,
he looks like Opie.
And if they take him at 16, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can handle that. I might need to go off in my own for a little bit.
I mean, shutting off the TV would take a lot. Man, I'm looking through some prospects. Give me a second.
Like Bo Nix, would that one be?
Yeah.
Like JJ McCarthy might be.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we have to worry about that anymore. I think he's going to
probably not.
I think that fear
I would be pretty upset about that.
There was a running.
No, I liked a lot of these guys. Braden Fisk is a guy that a lot of people like. I think is off my board completely. I don't think he's a fit for what the Seahawks are trying to do. So I'd be pretty disappointed with that. I don't know. Darius Robinson is up there for me as a guy in the first round.
Yeah,
that I would. That
was
like.
at 16. It would be gross. That'd be like the LJ Collier pick all over again.
Yeah. Even I see people saying Bo Nix. I'm not a huge Bo Nix believer, but there's enough there that I could see, if they were that excited about him, I wouldn't be totally upset. But if they took him at 16 and then Penix went later and Penix was the player who I think he's going to be, that would suck.
Yeah, because most of the offensive linemen around there seem pretty like Barden, Powers Johnson, Amarius Mims. Any of those guys would be pretty interesting. Defensive tackles would all be pretty interesting. Any edge rushers in there that you don't like?
You guys are just naming off positions at this point.
Well, we'll go through. We'll once Dayna finishes up here with paper.
Yeah, we're gonna do like 3 mock drafts.
We'll do it. We'll do it. You and I'll do some mock drafts. We'll let Dayna.
It's early. We're an hour early tonight. I can do like 6.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you and I'll do some mock drafts.
There's 3 more questions. Okay.
Okay.
So Anders, it says if one wide receiver or safety had to wait until next year to draft, meaning you didn't draft that position this year, which one would you choose? You guys know any for next year that you'd prefer to have?
So the 3 positions that you're saying, wide receiver, safety, and tight end, was that?
No, just wide receiver or safety.
If we went this year without addressing one of those 2 positions, for me, I'd be fine with wide receiver not being addressed.
This year. Okay.
Between those 2.
Okay. That's the 2 that got me. All right.
For me, safety, I'd be fine too. The safety class is not very good.
Yeah. All right. So back to Sweat. So this one says, with all the talk about Macdonald building the defense down the middle and coveting the big DTs, would you be shocked to see? Here's the good question. Would you be shocked to see the Hawks draft him in the first round at 16? Because
draft who?
Sweat. Clear up at 16. It says
I would
Schneider
be shocked
if he went that high.
Mainly because Schneider does not. It would really go against all his instincts to take that kind of player that high. But I don't think. I'll be clear. I don't think that is a crazy valuation of what he could do for your defense.
Okay.
Like Baltimore had Haloti Ngata, but he was a way more athletic player. But he went.
Well, the comp for Sweat from Lance Zierlein is Vita Vea.
And he went around 13, 14, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of the analytics people were like booing that pick though. Like it's a run-only player. He's become like the most dominant defensive lineman.
The other comp Zierlein had for him was Sam Adams.
Interesting.
I think Vea is a much better comp.
Because last year we looked at Mazzie Smith a lot. I know we were looking at him in the 20th or moved down. He had a Derek Hall level impact. He was awful.
Yeah.
And I know there was a lot of smart people that really liked him. And Siaki Ika was a guy we spent a lot of time on last year. He went in the 3rd round. He was pretty much a 0. So some of those guys don't typically go, but Sweat's like 360. He's so rare. And
He's a big
no,
guy.
he carries that weight really well.
He does.
Like for 360, like that's usually like a fucking blob. He looks pretty like he doesn't look like a out of shape like bum. Like
it's not cool that he looks better than me.
Me too. Like
360.
Me too. Like
Not
100,
cool.
150 pounds more than me. Like
Yeah.
All right. So this is the last question. It's from Imani, and it's a good one. I think this is really good for the both of you. It says, how valuable are future draft picks to this pod? Should we be stacking 2025 draft deck, excuse me, by trading down next month?
What do you think, Jeff?
I don't really have a preference for 2025. I haven't dug into that draft. I don't know how many. Last year they traded a pick away to give them more flexibility for this year, and they just gave away a second round pick. So it's obviously good to come into draft a situation like Green Bay. Brian tweeted out today, but I don't have it as a huge priority. Next year's draft at the top, especially with quarterback, is supposedly weak. Like this would actually be the draft I'd rather have the draft depth for. So I don't want to really trade away picks. I think that NIL problem is going to be going on for years, where those 4th to 7th rounders are going to take the money and stay in college. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So I don't really see it as a huge priority. I don't know if you see it differently.
My biggest concern is an NFL roster is not static. So people think about it as you're a good team or you're not a good team. It's not one thing. It is this living, breathing organism that you are trying to cultivate in your petri dish to grow into something scary and powerful, right? And what you've got right now is kind of a oddball mixture of parts that don't really go together at the same time frame. And so I feel like the Seahawks are in a situation where they need this draft to be pretty darn impactful, to the point where I'm very concerned about the lack of the second round pick and very concerned about them potentially passing on a blue chip player to get that second round pick by trading back. It's a real conundrum, which we've talked about a lot. I think if you have a great 2025 draft, next year's draft, I think you're talking about restarting the clock potentially in a lot of ways. I think like the quarterback situation becomes much muddier. A few different situations become muddier. And so if you're trying to take this roster and build it towards a contender, I am not as interested in 2025 picks. I think you really got to figure. In fact, I would be more supportive of robbing from 2025 to get picks this year, if necessary, than I would be of just sacrificing this year to get picks next year. So that's where I am.
It's interesting, the conversations around draft picks. I think that was a good question to end on, because to me, it feels like that's some people's whole focus is how many picks you have, how many picks. You got to get these young kids. Other people see it more as leverage, and how, that sometimes draft picks don't change things. And so there's some really good, interactions, sometimes some nasty little arguments, but about draft picks. And I know that we have some people on this podcast who are diehard draft pickers, right? Like that's what they want. So that's really interesting for me. All right. That's all our Patreon questions for this time. I know you guys in your mock drafts. I love it so much.
I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for the questions. Those are only available for people that are members at patreon.com/hawkblogger. You get instant access to the Slack channel when you sign up. Dozens of folks have been joining over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. They are in the Slack channel. They can ask questions, which we and the crew will answer each Wednesday. And I think I'm working on it now. I think next week we're going to have a guest. It'll either be next week or the week after. Michael Sean Dugar will join us from The Athletic. It's been a while since we've had him on the show, and I think he's got a new kid. So the morning time frame was not as conducive for him in the Hawk Blogger mornings, but the Wednesday evenings should work. So looking forward to having that, and we'll ask him some of these questions. So patreon.com/hawkblogger now is a great time to join. And also, now with Hawk Blogger Mornings every single day, including Saturday and Sunday, the only way to get the audio versions of that podcast is by being a Patreon member. They are only being uploaded to patreon.com/hawkblogger. So it is a perfect time to join. All right. Dayna.
Yes.
Dayna, you have been such a wonderful host. Would you like to stick around while we mock draft, or would you like to?
You know what? I think I might,
better-
because I like to watch where your guys' thought processes are. I promise I'll keep my mouth shut, but I just want to watch.
I just want to warn you, we might ask you things.
Well, ask away. Then you might get stupid questions. But I have been watching and reading and learning, and we've done a bunch of draft stuff over at Our Turf, and so I'm trying. I'm really trying.
We're a month away now. Like this
I know.
is starting to really shape up. Like we're gonna be in April next week. Like we're getting.
I know.
We're here. We're in draft season.
I got to get ready for the draft. It'll be good.
Are you going this year, Dayna?
Yeah.
I was thinking about going to Detroit. Detroit's close to me.
Oh, you should. Yeah, we'll be there for sure. That'll be fun.
Jeff, I'm going to be happy for you if you're asked to work the draft again, but also annoyed that you won't be able to be on our live coverage because I really enjoy it.
Regardless, we're doing day 3 again.
Okay. Well, hopefully, I don't know what I'm hoping for. Selfishly, I'm hoping that you're available.
Yeah.
For day 1 and 2. Day 2 was very lonely when I did that last year by myself, and I was so upset with our day 2.
Well, then do a great job.
I was so upset. And the main thing I was most upset about is that they didn't trade down in the second round with their first pick and that they stuck and picked Derek Hall. I got to say, I make tons of mistakes, but there's not a lot of draft takes that I've had over the last 3 years from the very day of the draft that I then feel differently about later. My takes on Creed Humphrey and D. Eskridge, my takes on our first round picks, I pretty much feel the same way I did at the moment. So we are using we've moved on for now. We're using Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator, which I know makes some people very happy because I think in some ways it's better. I will say that one of the flaws of this sim is Byron Murphy is low on the ranking. So he's always available late. I did a draft this morning where Carolina offered me 33 and 39 for 16. And I was able to move back out of the first round to take the first pick of the second round, and Byron Murphy was still there. That's stupid.
Yeah, this one's really pretty flawed.
That's
you got
stupid.
McCarthy still there.
But in any event, we're going to use them because I think in general, for all things considered, they're probably the best we've seen in terms of realistic ways that the draft falls. Let's take a quick look and see how this happened here. So pretty standard guys going in the top 15.
It's a weird one.
You do see Brock Bowers, Jared Verse get taken right beforehand. JJ McCarthy's available.
No chance.
We're not doing that. Someone else might want to do that, but we're not doing that. Latu's available, who a lot of he's climbing back up the board a little bit. Folks are big fans. I have a little bit of questions just athletically about how high his ceiling is. You've got Fatanu. So if you want the offensive lineman, you got him there. You got Newton, who's not high on my list. We got Byron Murphy. Jeff, assume you want to take a look at the trade offers, or do you want to stick?
In this scenario, I'd want to move down.
So one of the trade offers is from the Lions for pick 29, 61, 73, and 249 for pick 60.
That's not bad.
Of course you'd take that.
Yeah.
Of course, that's
their whole draft.
13 spots, and you get a second round and a high third round pick, and you get another pick in the 7th.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy yes.
Line it up.
Yeah.
Next offer is from the Patriots. It's pick 34 and 68 for our 16th and 81st, and a 2025 first.
Yeah.
Not saying we're going to do this, but if they offered this, Jeff, I think the Patriots are going to be pretty shitty next year or this year.
Yeah.
If
they offered that, I would take that trade.
Mm-hmm.
Would you?
Yeah. They're one.
I think this could be a top 10 pick. So
that's what I mean. They're one next year. It could be your quarterback. But I don't care about next year's draft in today's mock.
So you're basically moving back 16 spots in the first round to out of the first round, and then you're moving up 13 spots from your third round pick to the highest part of the third round.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're getting a first round pick.
Look at it this way too, or at least I would look at that. You get that 25 first. If you seriously are thinking about getting a quarterback in 25, you end up with 2 first round picks.
Yeah.
A little easier to move up.
So Jen Maz, who has been a patron for a long time, one of our favorite patrons, always has the strongest takes. Jen is never going to come with a meek perspective.
No, we love it.
She is like, take the Lions trade, goddammit. So, of course, you'd take this trade. I'm not arguing that. I think I have some questions sometimes because it's pretty unrealistic. This is not something the Lions would really offer.
They give up their whole depth.
Should we just do it? Because Jen,
Let's just do it. See what happens.
Let's do it.
Jen will like
Let's do it. Jen, we're going to do it for you.
Okay, this mock is awful right now. How is JJ McCarthy still sitting there?
We are still not going to take him.
That's just
so who went at 16? Latu went at 16. Be an interesting match with him and Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions.
Yeah.
I like the Lions.
So do I.
I really like that team.
They're your dream team with that offensive line. Amon-Ra St. Brown is like Doug Baldwin.
Yeah. Love their coach.
Like
Laporta.
Yeah, they're the underdogs. They have never won. Like, I like that team. All right. Fautanu goes at 20. Byron Murphy goes at 21. Johnny Newton goes at 22. Cooper's gone. I know, Jeff, that's hard for you. You're very influenced
him in Green
by
Bay. Oh, man. The white guy in Green Bay.
Jeff. So here we are at 29. You've got a cornerback, an offensive tackle. You've got Bo Nix. You've got Graham Barton, the guy that we don't know as much about. You got Michael Penix. You've got Christian Hayes as a guard. You've got Darius Robinson. You've got Tavondre Sweat.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? It's first round.
Me?
Yeah.
I would probably take Graham Barton.
Okay. We're not going to do that.
Penix would be. You're not going to do that.
No, I just want to know what you're going to do, but I'm not going to listen to you.
Or Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
you're not getting another shot.
Yeah,
we're gonna do this because this was asked as a question multiple different ways, and I think we should play it out for the folks on watching the show.
And 20, I mean, he's at 41, right? Is that no?
Yeah, based on this ranking, yes.
Yeah, so that's not even a crazy reach. I mean, it's a little bit, but
you're not the first round. We are going to take the most disruptive nose tackle in this draft. Okay. And we're going to stick him in the middle of our defense, and he is going to take that big belly, and he's going to roll it like Brandon Mebane all over the NFC West. All right? There he is. Okay, it's done. That.
Wow,
you really can't change it now, Jeff. Nice try. All right. So now we're at 61 because we gained a second-round pick as part of that trade back. We've already taken a nose tackle. Michael Hall Jr. Ooh. Build
the run wall.
I mean,
Chris Jenkins.
You put him next to Sweat. That's almost like. By the way, Michael Hall Jr. He is 20 years old. He is a sophomore coming out. He just ran at his pro day. He went up to. People have been saying he's too light. He's in the 280s. Then he was 290. He's 299 right now. And he ran a 4.87. He ran what Braden Fisk ran at 299. This guy is 20 years old.
Freaky.
I think he is as twitchy as Byron Murphy.
Yeah, and if you want like the long-term replacement for Draymond Jones, that's your guy.
I think that's a pretty interesting name. You've got Junior Colson.
Junior Colson would be the one where you're picking at 73.
I think you could still get him.
So do I. I think you got to roll the dice.
Let's double up on the defensive tackles.
We're building a run wall.
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Run wall.
Mike Macdonald is loving this draft. John Schneider is in shambles.
I love it.
Ooh.
I love it.
Well, Peter Colson's still here. Reject the trade.
Get it out of there. Get it out of there.
Interesting how high Roger Rosengarten's going in some of these.
He's moving up the board, it seems like.
And how low Braden Fisk went in this one.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
For me, it does. I mean, I think I'm having Griff join the show on Saturday morning. He sees, I think, Braden Fisk a little bit like I see Braden Fisk. Anyway.
We're a lot worse. He called him like non-draftable.
Yeah, he's off my board.
Yeah.
All right. So now we've got 2 defensive tackles.
Junior Colson.
Now do we go for linebacker, right?
Junior Colson.
Interesting that Cedric Gray is ranked above. This is another guy that I'm going to talk to Eric McLean about, who's the ACC guy. I want to talk to him about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I want to talk to him about Cedric Gray, all the ACC prospects. But I am interested in Cedric Gray. But Junior Colson's the easy choice, right?
Oh, man. This draft.
You just run.
Desperate for linebacker.
You run to it. And then we got another pick. This is why this trade is so ridiculous. This draft is going to look great. I don't mind it.
Okay. So now we want to look interior O-line.
I think that's right. I mean, Mahogany is an option. You could go. Let's just see what we got on guard. Puny's a guy. McCormick is ranked very low here. I've seen draft mocks where he's going in like the second round now.
I think he went in the second round of Matt Miller's today.
That's right. That's where I saw it.
Yeah.
You got Zach Zinter later, who also I think went in the second round in Matt Miller's.
He did.
So this is where this is a little flawed. We could wait. We could play the game and just totally game this thing and get one of these guys at our next pick.
So
do you want to make it more realistic?
Probably.
Okay. Of these guards, who do you pick? Who's your top choice?
Probably Mason McCormick.
Zinter,
actually. I would hate to lose Zach Zinter, but he's so low on the board here.
Don't worry about their rankings. Which do you like better?
Zach Zinter.
I think Zinter is a more projectable guy. He's just coming off an injury.
Yeah, I would hate to.
McCormick's a great athlete, but you don't know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah, I think we have the luxury to take him and maybe double up.
All right, let's do it. Let's take Zach Zinter.
They're going to crush this pick and the grades.
I don't care what they think. This is our draft, not theirs.
22.
Oh, there's our guy Mikey Sainstro. We got the pick. We were up again.
So we're up again.
Sam Howell pick. So
we could double up on guard, like we doubled up on tackle.
I would love that. Let's do it.
I mean, that's the needs, right?
So we're going to take McCormick and
yeah, because at least the Hedges Zinter coming off injury.
Just going to double check who else is available.
Yeah, we're not missing anyone, are we? No one's really jumping out to me.
No, I don't think.
No, let's do it.
So.
Mason McCormick's like
Mason McCormick.
We're hedging the Zinter injury right now.
Oh, now South Dakota State. Yes.
This is unreal. This it would be so nice to live in this world.
Theo Johnson, we could go tight end here.
We could go tight end. We could double up on linebacker.
Yeah.
Dude, line them up.
Jalen Ford at this point is pretty.
Right. So Jalen Ford was Matt Miller's third round pick for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And had like 6 interceptions over the last couple of years. He's a coverage guy. I like that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Jalen Ford done. I didn't like him in the third round. I think fourth round's a reasonable place to.
So the end of the fourth round. Now we're out of the fifth round, but here comes our
now. We go to the 6th round. We got to look for tight ends, right?
Yeah.
Or edges.
I know you like these edges. Joe Milton.
There's Joe Milton. Should we do this for Dayna?
Let's give Dayna Joe Milton.
Let's do it for Dayna.
Joe Milton. You'll get an F in the draft now.
Everybody's going to hate this, Dayna, just so you know.
You can hate it.
You get a lot of hate for that. So looking through this list.
AJ Barner.
Yeah.
Tip Ryman.
Good with AJ Barner.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Done. Blocking tight end.
6 rounds where you should be taking those guys.
And then we get all the way to pick 235. We have another pick after this. My goodness. We can take the best looking player in the draft.
Maybe Gabe Murphy. We had him in for a visit.
Yeah, Gabe Murphy.
We haven't touched edge
Sure.
yet. Last
And
pick of the draft.
then
We have
who
no
else?
safeties. We have, but I said I'd be fine to punt on safety.
We're taking a kicker.
Oh,
We're taking a friggin' kicker. We have not done this yet.
Oh, poor Evan. Hilarious.
So long, Jason Myers.
Evan is out there playing pickleball tonight.
Yes, he is.
So
Yeah.
Evan, he's too old to understand how things work in the NFL, and we're gonna
What's
show
this
him how.
guy's name? Cam
So,
Little.
This
oh my
draft is
God, I would be very happy with this draft.
could be like the Saints 2017 draft.
I mean, I got no notes. I got no notes. Right? Like the thing is, and this is why it's shitty. There's no way you would have gotten
that Lions trade is just
the Lions would not have offered that.
No, not to take Latu.
But this is what we were playing with a little bit before. Devondre Sweat as your first pick at the end of the first round. How do you feel about that, Jeff? I've been making a full-throated, case for him, but I understand that that's pretty different than the way a lot of people are talking about him. How would you feel about, do you see the blue chip that you want to see in this class?
No. However, I really like Devondre Sweat. He is, like I suggested Graham Barton first. Looking at this draft now, I think that would have been a huge mistake. I see Sweat as just the guy who's gonna. I think he's very projectable. I think he provides something different that they don't have. And if you want to build the run wall, like, sure, you can find those guys later in the draft typically, but like this is a guy I really like. I think it's clear impact. And the cool thing with him, to me, is that Grubb and Scott Huff studied him in depth going into that playoff game. They're going to know him really, really well. If they think enough of him to take him higher than his deemed value, to me, that says a ton. I don't see any chance that John Schneider does this, but I'd be on board. I really like the player.
Let's make a more realistic trade. So the Lions gave up 29, 61, 73, and 249. That's ridiculous. If they gave up just 29 and 61.
Yeah.
So you take out Cam Little, which is sad because I like we'll take it. We're going to take more kickers. I now have notes about that. But you take out Cam Little, and you take out Junior Colson.
Well, I probably would have wanted to draft Junior Colson at 61.
So if you didn't have 73, you would have drafted. You made a hard case for Junior Colson at 61.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Michael Hall's a better player than Junior Colson.
Probably, but I just don't think I can create a situation like they have at linebacker again next year.
Well, and that's the thing, because Jalen Ford, it's fine to have Jalen Ford later in the draft as like a guy that maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't. But if this draft only had Jalen Ford, then the linebacker looks like, ooh.
Well, sort of like tight end this year. Like last year, we spent so much time saying they got to draft the tight end. It was that stacked tight end draft. So many of them hit. All three of their guys almost weren't back this year. They had to pay Noah Fant as a result of that. If they had drafted, they could have moved up from Derek Hall and got Sam Laporta. Like, how much better would their roster outlook look? I don't want to create that again next year at linebacker, where they're forced and their cap gets screwed up because they have to pay all those one-year deals. And I think getting a linebacker early is really important to the long-term building of the roster.
Right. I'm going to make the opposite case quickly. Then we'll do one more mock. Maybe we'll go over to PFF. We're going to go back to PFF and see if that's changed at all, because it's been a while since we've done that. Here's what I'll say. I think linebacker is one of the easiest positions to fill.
Really?
I think about linebacker on defense as not quite equivalent, but similar to running back on offense. I think every year, this year is not a good example, but there's always talented linebackers available. I also don't think it's that important of a position in most defenses. I do think it's more important in Mike Macdonald's. And you have two guys that could be starters And then, maybe you fill in with undrafted free agents. Maybe you hit on somebody late. I think you could limp through at least this year. And so if you give me the choice between what Tavondre Sweat and Michael Hall Jr. could mean for this defense over the next 5 years, and what it would mean you'd have to make do at linebacker versus Junior Colson, who I'm high on. We've been picking him every time. The more I've looked into Junior Colson, I think he's a stretch as a second round pick. I think he's a third round pick. That's my current take on Junior Colson.
Yeah.
I think you're talking yourself into a guy because you have such a need at linebacker, and that gives me concern. So
fair.
Michael Hall is becoming he's my third ranked defensive tackle in this draft. I have him ahead of Johnny Newton. I'm going to be the only guy. You will not hear anyone else. And that could mean I'm an absolute idiot. Probably does mean I'm an absolute idiot. I like Michael Hall at 20 years old at 299 with the twitch that I see from him. I don't think Johnny Newton has the strength and power that a guy like Michael Hall or Byron Murphy has. I think Johnny Newton's a guy that only can win with technique and quickness. And I don't think that that's going to translate as well in the NFL. So to me, Johnny Newton is Quentin Jefferson plus. He's like a good version of Quentin Jefferson, but he is not a dominant starter.
So who do you see Hall as a comp for?
I think Hall is comparable to Murphy, at least in this class. I think he is a step behind that, but not that far of a step. And he's a year younger. I think they're very comparable.
Man, the thing that makes your case so appealing is just it's been so long since the defensive line has been a strength for this team, especially with Aaron Donald coming out of the division. To really build a long-term sustainable defensive line strength, I think that will impact the team other than offensive line as much as anything they can possibly do.
I think you have to look at it too as a domino effect. So you put those two next to each other. What is the domino effect to the rest of the defense for that? You know what I mean? And so then you look, it's well, if you don't have that, you just have one or the other, but then you have a great linebacker. I don't think domino effect is as big as if you get those.
That's a great point.
This is why you stick around, Dayna, for these mock drafts. You said the most insightful thing of anybody for the last hour. That is totally true because Junior Colson can't help the guys in front of him succeed.
Right.
No.
But Tavondre Sweat, he could be the difference between Tyrell Dodson being a quality starter and Tyrell Dodson being a unacceptable starter.
Mm-hmm.
He could be that difference. And if you had two of Michael Hall, you have Leonard Williams, those guys, we've seen years where Bobby Wagner had good defensive line play in front of him, and we've seen years where he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. Bobby Wagner's Hall of Fame. Dramatically different impact on the game, where he's making the tackles, how he can affect it when he had a good defensive line in front of him. When Brandon Meebane's been gone, that's a guy that people don't talk about enough. When he left, they never really replaced him that well.
And too many teams in the draft spend time trying to fill holes. Not enough teams spend time building on strengths, building on strength on strength. And it's something like some of the best teams have done really, really well. This would be a great example of building on a strength, a defensive tackle.
For sure.
I agree.
You're much better off than trying to find. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do one more. We're going to do PFF this time.
Hopefully they fix that.
Let's turn down the randomness.
Relax on the random.
Let's turn up the positional value a little bit. And yeah, let's go. Let's see if this has improved at all. It's been pretty bad. I'm having PFF Brad on the show on the Hot Blog morning. He's coming on next Thursday morning, hot off the presses, and he helps them with this mock draft simulator. So if we have problems, we're gonna take it up with him. Let's go. Look at that thing just fly. As a product development person, I just love the quality of this mock draft simulator is light years ahead of the others. But in any event,
this one looks pretty good compared to the last one.
It is. This is pretty chalk, and you got JJ McCarthy up there high, so this is like what's been changing.
Joe Alt at 7.
This is a big deal for Jeff. Everyone doesn't know this, but Jeff really wants Joe Alt to go to Tennessee. It's up to him if he wants to share why, but that's a big deal for him. Dallas Turner, Fuaga's gone. Bowers is gone. Verse is gone. Cooper DeJean is there. Byron Murphy is there. Johnny Newton is there. Troy Fautanu is there.
So where do they have Sweat on here?
Oh, they have Sweat way down. He's like 65, I think. In there
on the first page.
Yeah, he is.
Is they have Xavier Worthy down there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he is 74.
Yeah, PFF gets a little arrogant with their rankings at times. Like Xavier Worthy is not going in the 70s. Like,
yeah. So
I think
we're here at 16. There are multiple guys that we like.
Yeah.
If we move down, we might lose them all.
So what does it say? We have 26 trade offers? Oh no.
We have 26 trade offers. That means like now I complained to PFF Brad that there weren't enough offers. That there was you couldn't trade back. I think they might have overcorrected.
The Seahawks love overcorrecting, so they'd be big fans of this.
So we can trade back any pick you want, baby. They're all. Let's see what are the Panthers offering.
Let's get all the lines picked.
Oh, you know what this is? It's not giving us offers. Yeah, sorry, we haven't done this for a while. So it's basically what they've done is everybody is willing to trade. So now we have some offers that we can make.
Oh,
where would we want to go down to? We haven't traded with the Packers yet.
Green Bay is an interesting one because they have
Packers have just God. I hate the fact that they've got this many picks. They're going to be so freaking good.
Yeah, they got the Aaron Rodgers pick right there, and then they somehow got a 3rd round pick for Rasul Douglas last year, which was like a low key steal.
I mean, just amazing. They are going to be so good. If they don't, they shouldn't make any trades. So let's offer like for 25 and 58. Let's see if we can come get those. What? They're going to let us do that.
Yeah.
Do they overcorrect that much, or is this just?
It seems like they've overcorrected big time.
96%.
I do feel like moving up 9 spots.
Yeah, probably worthy of a late second.
Worth more than a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair for us to grab like a 4th.
Okay, take 126.
Does that feel good?
Yeah, let's take it. Thank you, PFF Brad.
See, they've made it.
Brian is like low key pulling the strings on like this whole operation.
So now let's see who's.
No, Cooper.
Still.
See,
so
Fatanu's gone.
That's who they wanted.
Gone.
Should have taken Fatanu.
Latu's gone. Graham Barton's gone.
Yeah, that's a tough spot.
By the way, Jen Maz does have a take. It is not a tepid take.
Love it, Jen.
She said Fautanu or I riot, and I'm Canadian.
So are you guys just against them taking Fatanu in the first round, or you just want a second round?
We really want him. We just want to do awesome more picks.
And
we're very biased.
Tempted to start over again. How do you feel about that?
Well, let's start over again.
Let's start over again because I was kind of just curious. I was a little enamored by this trade back. We learned this lesson already. We don't like.
No, this was the Brian. This was the Brian draft.
This is the Brian like just mess up the last time. So let's do this again.
Yeah, we have to take the Powers Johnson.
We're gonna take the randomness out. We're gonna add a little bit more care for positional value. We're gonna do.
Where are you on Powers Johnson?
And here we go. All right. Pretty much the same guys available. Should we? Is this like the Jen Maz draft? Are we gonna like?
Let's take Fatanu.
I think you should take. I was surprised you guys didn't take him last time. So
all right, let's do it. We're gonna say the offensive line matters. We've been hammering him about the offensive line, and now we wait all the way until the 3rd round.
Oh, they got Gabe Murphy in the 3rd round.
Yeah, the other one was just crazy. That's not right.
Blocky Corey's the guy that they're meeting with.
So this is, I mean, we already took our guards. So now these guards that we've kind of started getting interested in Michael
Michael
Hall
Hall
Jr.
Yeah, we got to take him here.
Let's take Michael Hall.
Yeah.
I assume Sweat's already gone,
Yeah,
or
I
else
don't
he'd be
see him.
showing up.
Yeah, Michael Hall. Start with Fatano and Hall. I feel.
I want to look really quickly where he's been going trend wise.
Oh,
so he's started to climb up in.
Yeah, because his workout at Ohio State was insane.
I think this thing is going to go whoop. I think he's going to be top of the second round. All right. We're taking him now, though. We're going to benefit from the tardiness of the rankings.
So, wow, Eric Hall's really shot up their board.
He has, for whatever reason, at least used to be, he's just available. You could keep just passing on him and he'll still be there.
Yeah, he was like a 6th rounder before.
What do we know about Dadrian Taylor Demerson from Texas Tech?
Nothing. It seems like a PFF thing.
Yeah, I don't know much about him.
Because we know more about football than you.
I do like Matt Gonclaves as another guard option.
They still have BB like down here. So that's insane. Too.
Cole Bishop. Bishop was a pick for Matt Miller to the Seahawks.
He called it his favorite pick of this whole thing.
That's right. That is right. I wouldn't mind taking Cole Bishop here. There's Cooper Beebe. We already got Fautanu. We don't need to.
It's also so stupid.
It is stupid. He's not going to be available down there.
Available 102.
Cedric Gray.
Yeah, Cedric Gray would make a lot of sense.
I think that might make some sense.
Yeah, I think
the other. Yeah.
I think I'd rather Cedric Gray than Cole Bishop.
All right, we'll do Cedric Gray. I would go Cole Bishop, but we'll do Cedric Gray.
Well, we can try to get Cole Bishop and Cedric Gray.
Ricardo, who is a patron, I believe, I'm pretty sure, he wants Jordan Travis. I think that's a good call, man. I think Jordan Travis is a good quarterback prospect. I don't know if I'd at this point be ready to spend a 4th round pick on him.
Because we don't have those 2nd and 3rds. We can't really take a.
So folks are talking about McKinley Jackson more. This is one of the big nose tackle kind of guys. I have a little bit more research to do on him, so I can't say he is not Tavondre Sweat.
No, God no. 30 pounds less.
His pass rush win rate is 8.7. Tavondre Sweat's is like 15, so double. His run stop rate's 9.2. Tavondre Sweat's is close to I think it's like 12 or something. So they're very different players. I just don't think that just because you're big that I would 4th round maybe, but I just don't think I would feel like he could add as much value. So let's take Cedric Gray because Jeff gets what he wants.
Cole Bishop. There we go.
Cool. So we get Cole Bishop. We're taking Cole Bishop. We do have those 2 4th round picks. Look at that thing fly. All right. Could take AJ Barner. I'd be fine with that.
Need a tight end.
Good block. There's
Tip Ryman.
He's never going to be available at this point.
No, we learned a hard lesson this week.
He's going to be like a 4th round pick at worst, I bet. We're taking him though. This is a good draft to end on. This is a happy draft. Anthony Gold had a hell of a pro day.
I don't know.
Did you see his numbers?
Hey, you guys didn't take a wide receiver in the last one at all.
We did not.
Is little McCaffrey still there?
McCaffrey, let's look him up. But who doesn't want a 5'8" receiver? Come on.
Oh,
we already have one.
Yeah, he can actually.
This guy can return kicks.
Wait, we're saving that job for DS. Remember?
So wait, you were asking about who, Jeff?
McCaffrey.
Let's take a look and see what receivers are available.
No, he's
does not look like it. So we're going to take Anthony Gold.
Okay.
Unless Jalen Green at edge is another guy. Could go there.
No, you just sold me on Anthony Gold.
Let's do it. Little mighty might.
You said it first. That's the way it's got to
go. He's the new Penny Hart.
Penny Hart.
All right. And then we are at our final pick.
You're taking a kicker.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Dayna.
You're
Yes. Kicker. Special teams. Harrison Mevis. I mean, that's just a fantastic. Like, they don't even have any numbers on these people.
Mevis and Butthead.
Like, he's good. Will Reichard. They just have no stats. They're like, if you're planning on taking a kicker, you're just a dumbass.
Cam Little, isn't that the guy we took last time in the other one?
It is.
Cam Little, who you took before.
We're going to take Mevis, though.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea that Harrison Mevis would replace Jason Myers and be a better player, it just
would be the new marketing efficiency for the Seahawks. They might actually learn something.
All right. Let's see what they think of our draft.
D plus.
They're not loving our draft. You know what, PFF? Well, I won't.
Michael Hall at 81 is a D.
They have what as a D? Oh yeah, Michael Hall. They're late. They're late.
They even gave our kicker pick a better value. It was 100 spots later.
So
yeah, we got to talk to Brad about this.
I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure how I feel about the Cedric Gray pick. But really, what this means is if you don't trade back, you're going to get one blue chip player, and then maybe you get lucky and get two. Like two, not two blue chips.
Because Michael Hall's not there. 81 looks rough.
Yeah.
So I like a lot of the guys in this draft.
I think they have to trade back. Like, I love Fatanu, but man, this could be a big
go back and forth, Jeff.
I know. I think Byron Murphy at 16 excites me a little more than like McGuard, as much as I like Fatanu. But again, if Fatanu comes out and he's a Pro Bowl level guard, it changes their whole ceiling.
Yes.
Like the Jim Harbaugh strategy.
Let's see what the chat says as we finish up tonight. What is everyone's grades for that draft? We got Wicked Garden, so that'd be an A+. Okay, Jen is satisfied. She says, "Oh, good. Okay." Ricardo says that we should bench Myers for Mevis on odd years. I like that.
Yeah, we should got to cut Myers after this season.
Yeah.
Christian Fuerte asks what he thinks we should be trading up from 81 into the second round. That's possible, but you're going to have to give up. You're definitely going to have to dip into your 2025 draft capital to move up. I don't think you can package picks in this draft and move up into the second round from the third, unless it's just a few picks.
They don't really have enough, right?
I don't think they have enough ammunition. I just think that teams are not going to really be very conducive to moving down out of the second round, because I think the draft really drops after the second round. So this is the pickle. This is the pickle that they're in. The Seahawks are not in position to become a great team after this draft. They're going to have to work the draft's going to have to fall to them in the right way, and they're going to have to make excellent decisions, and potentially they're going to have to find a sucker to take a trade and give them more value than they should. So a lot of things have to go right.
Why couldn't they have this stock this draft? They would have such good trade down potential at 5 in this draft. And it happened 30.
You want last year's picks this year. I know. I mean, last year was a lot of fun.
It was, but like this draft is so much better.
Well, I think after 2 hours, we should probably let you two go.
My wife's going to be, what the hell are you talking about?
It is so fun to spend time catching up with all of you. And thanks for everybody that has joined and watched. I will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Actually, tomorrow it will start at 7 a.m. It is Mariners opening day. Jeff's heading out. Thank you. Find him at Real Jeff Simmons. Dayna O'Gorman at Dayna OG. Thank you. I will be up 7 a.m. We'll be talking Seahawks and Mariners. So if you're interested in both of those things, please join us. Jason Churchill from Prospect Insider will join us. Also, please click subscribe, click like for the video, and go to patreon.com/hawkblogger to join and get access to the Slack channel and all the audio versions of the podcast. For this particular pod on Wednesdays, this will be available for everybody. That'll continue to be the case. So until next time, which is going to be very soon, take care. Have a good rest of your night.